Well, I think it's safe to say that we were devastated and shocked, and it's hard to look at something, a living being that is as beautiful as a 5.5-month-old child, and realize that she's going to die sometime in the next 2 years. You get less ambitious in what you decide to do, because a lot of the things that you thought you wanted to do or we're all busy doing become much less important. We were home a lot. We had a lot of friends come in. People passed through town, made a point of seeing us. Our house was very open and perhaps never more full than in those 2 years.
We went out and found a grief counselor from Children's Hospital that we began to meet with on a weekly basis?
No, it started as monthly. And then as she got sicker, it became bi-weekly, and then by the end it was weekly. We would have moved her into the house if we could have.
So one of the things we learned and are now very committed to is the importance of whole family care in a situation like this. So that coping with this diagnosis involves getting the emotional support for the parents and for the other siblings, learning about the disease so that you know what to expect from our perspective, understanding what you're going to need medically, and putting all that in place.
The disease takes a while to progress, so parents have a lot of time to figure it out. These aren't things that parents have to do right away.
And other families are and were for us a huge resource in everything from different ways to think about the care of a child, to how to advocate for resources, to just the assurance that you can make it. In that, most states have some mechanism for supporting families with nursing care when a child gets particularly sick, and we could not have done it without the nurses. And that meant both when she was sick, but not in critical condition, and then also when we transitioned into the end-of-life care. In both of those settings, having access to medical professionals in the house was critical, and that's there. You just have to advocate for it. When you get the support you need, including emotional support, and you make a commitment that this is your primary goal, you can make a really full life for your family. One of the things that we discovered by accident was that even as terribly sad as we were and tired as we were all the time, she lived a very full life. And it didn't feel like we were just, obviously there were many days where it felt like we were just hanging on by our fingernails. But what we really focused on was, let's make this a full life in each day. And that was our goal. And I think we were able to do that by and large.
So at the time of Cameron's diagnosis, her older sister was 2, and we met with a child psychologist to figure out how to talk with her about what was going to happen with her sister, because that was our number one concern. We cared most about what this would mean for her older sister. The psychologist told us, don't answer any questions that the child hasn't asked. You don't have to tell them what the end prognosis is. It won't mean anything to her anyway. But we did make very clear to her that her sister wouldn't walk and wouldn't talk, because these were things that she was very excited for her sister to start doing with her. And then we also made very clear to her that this disease wasn't her fault and that she didn't have it. These were things that the psychologist told us were going to matter a lot to her. It was a very inclusive life, so the children were with each other always. We were very tight, so we didn't make it. I think we did our very best to make sure our older daughter didn't think something scary was happening. And then there was a lot of family around, so she felt very buttressed and cared for.
When Cameron died, we got letters from a lot of parents in the preschool where our daughter was at the time. She was 4. And several of them, in a relatively small universe, several of them said that they'd been through something similar. One of them had had a sibling die, one of them had had a parent die. And in the generation before ours, the response was to never talk about it again. And for us, we have made Cameron a part of our family, and she continues to be part of our family.
There were practical reasons why work was important, certainly, including actually the health insurance is really, really important when you're caring for a sick child. And in that moment, the health insurance was through my job. But I also knew that I wanted to keep working, that I would be a better parent to Cameron if I was not with her all day long. Our marriage was a tremendous priority for both of us, because caring for a sick and dying child really needs two parents who are working well together, and the key to that was therapy. We had a lot of phenomenal help from a phenomenal therapist who helped us have the difficult conversations in a facilitated setting and gave us the skills and tools we needed to continue those conversations at home. I really can't stress the power of therapy enough in this situation. I think it's asking a tremendous amount for any couple to do this on their own.
Every couple I know through MTSAD has had this same issue, where one responds in one way, one responds in the other, and they can be opposite responses. And if you don't have someone help you talk about that, it can create a huge amount of tension.
Somebody gave us advice early on and after the diagnosis that the people that we would expect to be the best might disappoint us, and the people who we wouldn't have many expectations of would surprise us in the most wonderful of ways. And it proved to be true. And I think what it did for us is it made us have a lot of patience, a lot of compassion, and just a general acceptance with our friends and family, so that if they were being annoying or not understanding, we gave them a big pass.
Don't waste your energy worrying or judging people for what they've said or done. You simply have to let it go. Mm-hmm. And it was great advice. We simply didn't spend the time worrying about who was doing well or who was doing badly and supporting us. We just welcomed those people that were really helpful, and sometimes they were a surprise. Our philosophy of care was to maximize Cameron's comfort and to help her live what we call the full arc of her life. We chose to believe that the arc of her life was different than what we had expected, but also full. We make choices to keep her comfortable, and that we make choices that, for our family, focused on the disease running its course with minimum interventions. Again, not something that we believe is right or wrong. It was just what felt right for us and for Cameron.
It's interesting because when we started, we thought that we wouldn't use any tubes at all. And when she got her second pneumonia and really wasn't able to take antibiotics orally very well, we did decide in that moment to use an NG tube, and she had an NG tube for 7 days. And then when she got her third pneumonia, we decided, when was very weak, and clearly at the end of her life, we decided not to treat that pneumonia.
We made a decision as a family that we wanted the disease to follow its natural course, and that we would listen to Cameron for signals from her. In our experience, we really felt that she wanted to let the disease take its natural course with the least amount of interventions. We knew that after a feeding tube is put in, that the number of interventions that she would require, as compared to her ability to interact with the outside world through sight and hearing, was going to be much lower. It meant we had less time because we didn't do dramatic interventions around her loss of ability to swallow. When there's no good option, there's no wrong answers. So we don't feel in any way that there's a right answer to managing that symptom. It is important to note that for our family and for others, we felt that Cameron was ready to go at the time that she was no longer able to take in nutrients.
Charlie lived through the death of his nephew 5 months before Cameron died, and was able to he bore witness to the death of his nephew Hayden, to Tay Sach's. and was able to come back to me and tell me, in a way that I obviously believed, that the death wasn't scary. The death could be beautiful.
I think the most important thing to know about end of life, and I wish I'd known it earlier, is that a child can be comfortable at every moment of their life, right through the last moment.
We certainly never know what we're capable of, and I think human beings prove this time and time again, that we're capable of tremendous amounts that we would never expect we can do, and living through the death of your child is at the top of that list. When I think back on who I was in those days when we were waiting sitting with Cameron, sleeping with Cameron, lying with Cameron, knowing that she was in her last few days, I don't really recognize myself because I can't believe that I did that. But you do. And I have extraordinary amount of respect for the two people who did that for their daughter. I think for anyone watching this, you will believe it when it happens to you, that you are capable of seeing this through. And you are braver than you can ever imagine.